Hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets&Quants. We've got a topic for you today with Jeremy Shinewald, founder and CEO of mbaMission. We're going to talk about what people love and they hate, business school rankings. And I know you're on the hate side. I got to say, I'm a little mixed, but I'm probably
You're the grandfather of the rankings.
I'm leaning more for love,
You're
the hate guy.
John, he just introed me. I'll intro John. John was the editor-in-chief of Business Week's business school section when they started the ranking. Is that right?
That's right. I created the first full-time MBA ranking, regularly published. There had been occasional rankings before that, but never one that was really published on a regular basis.
Right.
I was back in 1988 when I was, 12 years old, and it was astounding because, first off, how we ranked business schools was on the basis of their customers. And we defined their graduates as customers, and we defined the corporate recruiters as customers. So it was really a customer satisfaction survey. No GMAT scores, no acceptance rate, no starting salaries and bonuses, none of that stuff that you could get on your own. And if you want to play with those numbers, play with them.
Right.
But we wanted to get proprietary data based on all of the work that we did. And Kellogg was number one.
Right.
And it made sense.
Right.
And we go into why it made sense, because I know that you think most rankings are completely nonsensical.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, they changed so much over time now. Right now, there's all this, but that's one of the things that it's not that I think they're all nonsensical. There's value in helping people directionally. I think pointing people in a direction towards quality is a good idea.
And it's the first place applicants go.
Yeah,
they want to just look at the landscape. Okay, what are the possibilities?
And if you talk to admissions directors, it's also the last place they'll go. They'll ultimately, most decisions are made on the basis of cash the school offers, so scholarships and rankings. No matter what students say about the fit or anything like that, people make their decisions even against their own sort of like fit interests on the basis of, mostly on the basis of ranking. And so it is the first and last place that people tend to go. But maybe it's a sorting mechanism. Maybe it's like, okay, I'll eschew this school or that school.
Well, let me make the case for rankings.
Okay.
And you can take the counterpoint. Okay. Rankings generally are directionally correct over time. So sure, there are a number of anomalies in every single ranking and weird results. And whenever you're working with statistics, that's what happens. And particularly when you're working with stats that are put together into a formula by people who know nothing about business education. And it's really an exercise in clickbait. Okay. And that's what unfortunately most rankings are.
Yes. Yeah.
But if you look over time at these rankings, I'd say they're pretty accurate about where the schools stand. And when I was starting the ranking, there would be 25 schools, but they would say they're all in the top 10.
Right.
And the 50 schools would say they're in the top 25. And, just can't be true. Okay, now here's the other real the thing I most like about rankings is they require the schools to submit data that tends to be standardized.
Right.
So you actually have, when you parse the rankings, data that you might care about more than an overall number against a school.
Right.
And the transparency that provides to an informed buyer, which is what an applicant is super helpful.
Right. I agree with a lot of what you said. I agree, and I'm not, despite what you might think, I'm not an extremist. I think
one more. Well, Jeremy, I got to make one more point.
Okay.
I think,
and then I'm just going to tear it apart.
Absolutely. I think one of the reasons why the MBA remains the most popular graduate degree in America, and the business undergraduate degree remains the top major in America, is because of rankings in the mind share that they get. When Business Week, Forbes, U.S. News,
Financial Times,
The Economist used to be doing the Financial Times, all of them are telling you they're doing major features every single year on these schools' rankings. What they're really telling you is that business education is important, and you should take advantage of it. And I really think that has contributed to a great extent to the boom in business education.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that transparency around the data, even something. I mean, look, business school. Let's be honest. A lot of people are looking for a salary bump to see the average salary. Like you don't necessarily you might be able to Google it now, but you don't see the average salary for a geology master's degree the way, you don't see it. And I would say arguably, it might even push that higher every year. Part of the, it's, it could be a somewhat, I don't really use a virtuous cycle, where it gets published and the employers see it and they've got a benchmark to push higher. So there's a lot of value in the data. I agree. My feeling is at times it's the tail wagging the dog. Now, I remember reading when it came out, I can't remember what year it was, The Tipping Point, and Malcolm Gladwell in there cited a study of someone of a group that asked, I think it was either law school professors or law school deans, the law school community at some level, to rank the following 25 schools. And I can't remember which one it was. I want to say Penn State at the time came up ranked, like, according to all these like law insiders, like number 22 or something like that. Didn't have a law school. And so it
incidentally, when U.S. News first ranked MBA programs, Princeton was in the mix.
There you go. Okay. Yes. Okay. And that's precisely what my point. So of course, Princeton doesn't have an MBA program, and so you end up getting really just this sort of groupthink around broader brands.
Yeah.
And so that would say, when I started in this business, Yale was ranked number 25 or something like that. Now, Yale's come a long way. They built a new building.
Absolutely.
They've got, they had some amazing
deans.
They
had a terrific dean.
They have a wonderful admissions team.
Yeah.
They're a great school, but they definitely, I'm not so sure that that Tufts could have made that leap that quickly. And they made that leap largely because of the Yale brand. Maybe that's fair. I'm just saying that, like, I think that there's this, I worry that there's this sort of very calcified perception of rankings that just is kind of stuck in time, with the exception of like a Yale or something like that. Really, that like it's Northwestern might have been there the first time, and it might have been there in a time where media wasn't quite as this intensity of media now. But people basically have settled on who they believe the top schools are, and they just agree that Harvard and Stanford are number one, and you can't displace them. There's no displacing. And I'm not saying they need to be displaced. They're wonderful schools, but it ends up reinforcing.
But is Harvard better than Stanford, or is Stanford better than Harvard?
It just depends on which way the wind is blowing that day for that person, right? So like we have lots of dual admits every year. I mean, there aren't that many, but we have, and I think
Stanford tends to win them.
What's that?
Stanford tends to win dual admits.
Tends to win, but like, you see some members of our team who will say like, well, my clients, Harvard tends to win, and it just, but like, the point is, okay, there we're talking about like really, really parsing some narrow data for that 1-2 punch. But as we talked before, let's say theoretically Cornell spent 10 years as number one, every 2 years was number one in Business Week. I don't think anyone would choose it over Stanford.
No,
I think there's
but they might choose it over anything other than Harvard, Stanford, Wharton.
Yes, it's possible. Theoretically, after 10 years, yes, maybe they would. Maybe it would start to change over time. But like the perception of brand is what propels the rankings, which reinforces the perception of brand, and anything else that deviates from it is considered to be a silly outlier. So that if I don't know, someone who doesn't rank, the New York Times came up today and said, we've done our own ranking, and our ranking says that number 1 is Fuqua, number 2 is Ross, number 3 is Cornell, number 5 is Yale, number 6 is Harvard. Everyone will be like, this is the dumbest ranking ever. Why are they doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Everyone knows. What's the point in having the ranking at that point? Just have an annual brand perception ranking.
Although right now Harvard is what, 7 in U.S. News and 6 in Business Week.
Okay, so it's 6 in Business Week, and Tuck is 4 and Darden is 5. I want to meet the people.
Your alma mater.
And like, I love these schools. I think Tuck's awesome. I think Darden's awesome. And I think people should logically be saying, I'm a small school guy. I prefer these schools to, like, I think there's someone could make that argument, but they don't. And so I want to meet the person who looks at Business Week and says, I was considering Harvard, but Tuck is 4. I'm going to Tuck over rankings. Now, I would say someone could make that choice over personal preference. I don't think it happens that often, but they could. I don't think, like, that's my point of the nonsense of the rankings, is that no one is making their choice on the basis of what the rankings actually are, but on the perception of what they should be. And those things are stuck, and it doesn't make sense.
Okay, although if you're accepted to talk and you call mom up and you say, Mom, I've been accepted to Dartmouth Talk. She'll say, well, that's really fantastic. Well, they're ranked 4th, 2 ahead of Harvard Business School.
Yes.
That you feel good about that. Okay.
They can feel good about that for 2 years until they swing the other way. And that's the other thing is that there are these wild swings, right? So you got Darden, what did I say, is 5 in Business Week, and they're like 11 in U.S. News. I don't know, do you want to call your mom and say we're 11 or we're 5? It's pick a ranking. Say, okay, this year
take the higher number always.
Yeah, exactly. But it's sort of some of it comes down to that. And also there are some changes over time. So when I was applying to business school, I would say Cornell was typically in the mix in the top 10 in Business Week, and it just isn't there anymore, right? Cornell is probably the school that has had the most precipitous decline over the last 20 plus years that I've been doing this. If you were to have picked Cornell on the basis of rankings in the year 2000 when I was applying, you weren't buying the future. You're buying the past when you're buying a ranking, I guess. If you're really buying the ranking, you're buying the past.
So you're saying buy low, sell high?
No, I'm saying no one knows where it's going to go. And so if you were really saying look, again, less scrutiny of the rankings at that point, fewer rankings at that point. Right. If you were just saying look, I've got this Business Week magazine. I've got a physical magazine that I picked up at Barnes & Noble. And, some sort of, you got 2 complete anachronisms there, a magazine and a store where you can buy it. And you picked it up and you had it in your house and you leafed through it. And I know this because I did that. I said every once in a while, oh, which one was that? And Cornell was high on the list. And again, great school. My father-in-law went there. Lots of amazing graduates. I'm not trying to criticize Cornell. They just haven't been, ironically for a business school, haven't been great stewards of their own brand. But if you were to have been well, when it comes down to it, Cornell in 2000 is number 6, and I can't remember. Let's say whatever the other one was. Darden was number 9. Let's say I don't know, number 11. I'm into both. I'm going to go to Cornell. If you're really choosing the basis of rankings, then they change over time. You're not buying the future. You have no idea where it's going to go. So you are in some ways attempting to prognosticate on the basis of where we are today, which is impossible. It's not like stocks. There are no future cash flows. I mean, other than your own, and a lot of that isn't even tied to rankings. I mean, a lot of that people. Sure. This is a great one here. I've got a very good friend of mine who went to Darden with me, and he's the only one left at Morgan Stanley from his class that started with all sorts of Harvard and Wharton and people. And he's not there because he went to Darden. He's there because he has a preternatural ability to do this work. But he probably got in because he went to Darden. Yeah, but got the job. But my point is that no one there these days is saying to him, you get the promotion because you went to X school or Y school, and no one was saying, I mean, the people who were from Wharton, they weren't necessarily ushered out. Maybe they left for something better or worse or whatever it is. Sure. After the first day, no one had a clue where anyone went to school. It was all about results in that moment. Of course. And so people are so as if, I've said this before, as if you go to Harvard and someone says, okay, Harvard guy, you're hired. Now go sit in the corner and think of something brilliant. We'll pay you double as much as everyone else. It's no, we want to see results on day one like anyone else. That's true, although I would bet that the expectations of a Harvard employee are higher. And therefore, it may be even more difficult to deliver. A little bit burdensome, yeah. Yeah, I do feel actually, I think that is true. I do hear that from some Harvard grads who will say not really looking forward to my reunion that much. As if to say, there are a couple of people who just completely shot the lights out, and I'm going to go back and say that I've made steady progress. That is a bit of a burden, I would say. So given what you think about rankings, do you think they have any value at all? And how should applicants even use them? I mean, is it just entertainment value? I've got so many more critiques, but I would say, I mean, look, I think directionally speaking, they're a first place that you go. I'm not negating the value of some of the higher end brands. You should take advantage of that brand equity that comes with going to a top program. I just think that people should be still critically evaluating their information. We've had people over the years who've come back from a class visit at Harvard and said boy, I'm not so sure. Like the case methods for me, it's a really big place.
Yeah.
Like if you're saying that, don't say, but it's Harvard and I'll apply anyway. Say it's probably not the fit for me. And like I probably could find somewhere where I'm going to enjoy myself a little bit more often. And I don't think people are even doing that. I think they're just like, look, I'm applying to business school. You apply to Harvard when you apply to business school. I'm like, I can't argue with that. Like emotionally, I can argue with that intellectually, but emotionally, I understand where that applicant is coming from. But it's a lifetime connection to a brand and to like, it's a lifetime connection to your education.
So if you had to measure the quality of an MBA program at a business school, how would you do it?
I think I would do it with like again, in a way that no one wants to hear. What do people like about rankings? They like the oversimplification. And so I think that if I were to ask people to do it, I'd ask them to dig in and really see what's being measured and say to themselves, you know, like, is what's being measured important to me? And, you know, if it's not, then to kind of take it with a grain of salt. And like,
no, that's good advice.
But like, I think it's like also like I'm living in my own land of like fairies and elves when I say that. I don't think anyone's is gonna do that. Like, but I think that would be a great place to go. Yeah. You know, after that, it's tricky. Like, is there a way to really do employer surveys and student surveys where it's not just like rah rah, or the admissions office isn't saying like, we've got this important survey, please fill this out, because they know that all the homers are going to put their own school. Like I don't think there's any way to have an actual clean set of data that thoughtfully does this. So I think we are where we are, which is in this very, very, I keep using those words, like ossified, calcified version of what rankings are, because people just only accept the pre-existing notions of them.
Right.
But people like them, you know.
People love them.
People love them, yeah.
And people hate them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, people love them. It's your biggest clicks of the year are on rankings.
Absolutely. And you're right. Each ranking measures different things.
I think an ROI rankings is actually an interesting one that maybe more fair and that sort of does shake things up. And we've talked about that before. There are some anomalies in like an ROI ranking. That's how long is your ROI period? You know, like what?
Yeah, it all goes to how you measure it.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are tricks to this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like, is your ROI period, you know, 2 years or 3 years or 5 years? But like, you know, coming out of a school that has low cost and high and low debt load, there's something to be said for that. You know, if your salaries are relatively similar to others. So.
Yeah, and then you have to have access to pre-MBA salaries.
Right.
Which means you have to survey students or graduates.
And people always inflate their...
That's right.
So
there are always problems with that. You know, it's just, it's a bit of a nightmare to get a real, true measure of the quality of business school. But do rankings actually measure the effectiveness of the school's leadership? Because, you know, in many specs for dean jobs, it's clearly spelled out, you will improve the ranking of our school.
And there's some deans who are amazing at it, like Dean Snyder, who I believe is now retired, but he started at Darden. He left right the year I got there in a shocker. He left and moved to Chicago. He got Darden's ranking up like very significantly,
and then got Chicago,
and then got Chicago, and then got Yale.
And he got Yale up,
and he got Yale. He's a rankings, like he knew how to do it.
Yeah, and
I'm sure there are others who are just like, I'm an academic, like this is not what I need to be doing. I'm here to run an institution. I'm here to think long term. But you're right. I mean, I think it's incumbent upon leadership. That's what students care about. That's what alums care about. Alums get upset when rankings drop.
True.
Alums make donations. Like
So the fact that Harvard is now languishing in 7th place in U.S. News and 6th in Business Week, is that an indication of poor leadership?
I don't know about that. But I will say I know I live in Boston. I know a lot of Harvard Business School alums. I've never heard one say, I'm really upset about our current ranking. You're out there, you got your Harvard degree, you got your brand. You're not looking at U.S. News and lamenting it. You don't care. You know.
True enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. There you go.
That's it.
Just a little bit. We could talk about rankings forever. All day long.
Yes.
But we're not going to do that to you.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thanks for watching.
Thanks so much for being here.